Hey, welcome back to the SBP Podcast Mobile Filmmaking. I'm your host, Susie Botello, and you are listening to episode 131. Hey, everyone. I am here with Ryan and Brandie McDonald. They are in Ogden in Utah. They were in San Diego last April for our film festival. And I am really happy to touch bases with you guys and share your stories with our listeners. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Thanks for having us. We're excited to be here.
Yeah, it's Sunday night, and what else are we gonna do, right? Other than record a new episode for the SBP podcast.
Yay!
Yay! So I wanted to thank you both officially in front of the whole world for making the trip out to San Diego. I know San Diego's weather was freezing. It was like snow blizzards. The food was horrible. What was your experience like?
None of those things.
Yeah, it wasn't freezing at all, I don't think.
Yeah,
I was exaggerating a little bit. It was a little bit of a vacation, right?
Yeah, that's how we treated it.
Yeah, we certainly treated it like a vacation. Out here in Utah, we get a little bit of all four seasons. So experiencing, the beach and the palm trees and just the people and the culture, it was certainly different and wonderful experience. So.
Yeah, you guys came and you presented a workshop, a presentation on mobile filmmaking with the iPhone. Mm-hmm. But we met before, not in person, so it was really exciting to meet in person. But we met because basically you guys submitted a feature film which you shot with an iPhone back in 2020 for the International Mobile Film Festival here in San Diego. And, of course, you planned to come out, and I'm telling your story for you. But then COVID happened, and so we had to do it online. It was really disappointing for both of us, actually. But we figured out a way of getting you into our film festival. It took a couple years. So just briefly, what was your experience like meeting the other filmmakers and just your overall experience?
Yeah, I mean, it was great. It was I guess it was kind of, as far as the story of Married and Loving It, our story of making it, for me, it was kind of like bookending that entire story because we never actually made it to a festival live, as our entire festival circuit was done through the pandemic. And so for me, the festival that we debuted at was the International Mobile Film Festival. And then to kind of like close the book on it was then getting there, now 2 years later, but being there to, show everybody a little bit of the trailer, then chat about how we made the movie overall. And so it was nice to finally get that face-to-face time. And a lot of the filmmakers that we met while we were there and we networked with, we're still in contact with today. And that's a huge part of filmmaking, obviously, is having that networking. And so it was really good to have that face-to-face and be able to finally make that network connection with so many people that we had even seen their films in previous years when it played with ours, but then they were there at the festival and we were able to meet them face-to-face.
Yeah, I have to agree.
I was going to ask you.
No, it was a great experience, and kind of like what Ryan had said, just it really just a debut for us. Even though there was a delay through COVID, we had to wait a couple years. It finally felt like we were debuting our film for the first time, even though we didn't screen it when we came out for the festival this year, and then we did our workshop. But it was just a great experience, and networking with other filmmakers of our level was great. We built some great relationships with great filmmakers. Like Ryan said, we're still connecting with these people today, hopefully forever.
It was really neat also that Levi finally did get to make it out. Levi Austin Morris, who actually, Ryan, you met during that Zoom panel that we did. Because it was after that panel that he decided, you know what? I mean, I like to twist people's arm, make a feature. And he decided to go ahead and make one with the iPhone. But it was really nice that he came out, because not only did you guys meet there, but he was a part of that film festival as well, you know, with his short film. So I just love the sense of the community with the mobile filmmaking, and to know that you all, you know, connected and made friends. This is really great, especially when you're connected through social media, because you help amplify your future projects together from different places, you know, around with different audiences, you know, and different people following you on different platforms, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, completely. Yeah. It's just been nothing but ongoing support too from one another. So it's just, everyone's just so kind and gracious, and they're excited to hear about your project and get to know you. So that was overall just a great experience.
Hey, one last question about the festival itself. Did you guys enjoy that red carpet extravaganza that we put on for you?
Oh, yeah. It was fantastic. Yeah, like we loved the whole Star Wars kind of setup. It was nice. It was amazing. So thank you for rolling that out for us and celebrating all the filmmakers that were there. And that was wonderful.
So let's talk about your film a little bit, because, you know, some of our listeners are new from 2 years ago. Tell us a little bit about that, if you can. Ryan, you made that film. It was all shot in one house. The screenplay, right, the story itself took place within several houses, technically speaking, with different couples. So give us a little synopsis about the film, and then how you managed to pull this off in such a great way. Because it is on, how long has it been on Amazon Prime?
Wow, probably about almost 2 years now at this point. It's coming up to about a year and a half.
Yeah,
incredible.
It's about a year and a half.
It's been on Amazon Prime. It is available to rent. I think it's $1.99 for the rental. Yeah, so Married and Loving It is a film that the idea at the time was, people were saying, well, every writer, I think, has heard the additive, write what you know. And for me, what I knew at the time was this previous marriage that I had for 10 years, and I was in it when I was writing the screenplay. And some of the things changed actually when that marriage ended, but it was kind of like the idea was, you know, the day-to-day life of this very toxic kind of relationship, and how things are high and low. And also with the intention of knowing that I was going to make a movie with, you know, zero budget, was, so keeping it in one location was part of that. Keeping it where it was just two characters is a part of that as well. So that way, you know, don't write it like a bus explosion if you don't have the money to do the bus explosion or the car crash. And so that was also part of that idea. So the movie's set inside of one house. It is a married couple, and it's kind of setting on the eve of their 10-year anniversary, and you know, the highs and lows of what can happen in a day-to-day. And then as the production, as we were kind of going through the pre-production aspect, the idea came, well, what if we had different actors for each scene? And so it can be interpreted. Originally, when I wrote it, it was meant to be the same couple, but it is also interpreted then, is it many couples? Is it all of us? How does that work? And really, it was kind of a way of breaking it up. What I was afraid of was having kind of just a talking heads film, and I was trying to find a way to make it interesting overall.
That really worked. I had no idea that I mean, maybe you said it before and I missed it, or I forgot, but I did not know that it was all just one couple originally, and you decided to split that, because I think it worked a lot better, definitely, the way you made it, the way it ended up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess also the worry was, because knowing that we're shooting again on zero budget, and And I've had situations before in the past where you have an actor who's lined up to do the job, and let's say they have like a beard or they have long hair or something like that, and then you start shooting and they at some point shave their beard or they change some kind of appearance of themselves that it's like, well, you weren't thinking about the production in a sense, and I needed you to have that for the next 8 months. And so having that worry, I was my best friend and also a producer on the film, Jason White. Him and I were chatting about that, and then he had said, well, why don't you do what Louise Boonwell had done for Obscure Objects of My Desire, which is where you have an actor, you have one character but played by multiple actors, and then that way you could just film the pieces separately with different actors. And as soon as he said that, it just hit, like it was like that's exactly like the creative change that I needed for this not to feel monotonous about just the two actors like screaming at each other the whole movie. And
also because actors, over that length of time hope to get other parts in other movies and projects, and that might not, the beard may not fit right for them at the time or whatever.
Yeah, and we did have that. We had moments where, because it's a narrative piece that only I know because I wrote it, but like there's a section of it where it's like the character's like shaving, or and so there was moments where the actors get on set and they're like, hey, I have a commercial that I'm actually shooting next week, but they want me to have a goatee. And then I had another actor where we had kind of a family emergency on one weekend, and we canceled our shooting day, but then the only available weekend was like 2 months later. And the problem was that the actor that we had to have his beard because he was in a play that was going to be happening and needed to keep it. And so then I was like, okay, well, I have to know today if I'm shooting you with a beard or not, because when we pick this up in 2 months, when we're all available again, we have to keep that aesthetic in some way. So we did have that problem.
But the beautiful part was, just to add to that, the beautiful part of that was, it's like, okay, we have this actor for this one scene. If we can narrow down their shooting time in just a couple days or a couple weeks, like that worked out great. So instead of having two actors over the course of X amount of months, it was nice to just break them up with different actors. So.
Wow. I just can't imagine, taking the features that I've worked on were actually the two features that I worked on were 3 weeks. There were 3-week projects, and then we also, took weekends off, that's really interesting. So why did you extend it for an entire 8 months? Like, what made that happen?
I think a lot of it was just because our personal lives too. We have, we share kids with, other people. So I think that adds to the schedule too. So shooting like every other weekend or once a month. So we had to look at our own personal schedules too. Like, how does this, affect our personal lives? And so we had to work around that as well.
I mean, ultimately we only had 8 shooting days, but we started in July of 2018, and then the bulk of everything was shot by August. It was the final scene in the film that, because again we had a delay of family emergency, we had to cancel on the weekend, and then it was kind of like then it was like trying to get everybody back together again, and so then nobody else was available till like November for whichever reasons. And it's also the final scene when kind of if you see the movie, where now every couple, all the different actors are coming together. And so now I have more than just 2 actors on set for the day. I've got 5 or 6 people playing the husband or the wife. And so, but the other part of it, when you're shooting independent and on the no budget zone that we are, I've had production schedules before where we're shooting Friday night, all Saturday and all Sunday. And then everybody goes back to their day jobs on Monday, and then you do that for 14 weeks. And I've done that before, but I really want it to be where I don't want us to get burned out. And so my objective is like, I want to shoot this where it's like, we start at 8, we're done by 5, we have our Saturday night. I don't want to see you guys on Sunday, and we'll come back later. Like, I really want it to be where I wanted to keep the fun, and even if that meant that we, I did everything I could to shoot what I could in that time period. But I just didn't want this to be this grueling 14, 15-hour days, and it takes up everybody's weekend. And then I just don't want to overexhaust people who are doing this because they're my friends and not for any other reason than that.
Not that you would whip other people into into doing it, but yeah, that makes sense. And I remember that we did discuss this in the previous episode. It was just so long ago. I want to ask you something about your screenplay, because now that took a while for you to complete, right?
Yeah, let's see. I started writing this screenplay originally in 2015, and I had this idea that I had this goal in mind that was going to be done in a month. And then I had basically the first draft done by the end of 2015, and then as I already mentioned, it kind of led into that relationship was coming to a close, so other things took priority at the time, and it got set aside. And it was the fall of 2017. My producing partner Jason White had said, "Hey, this coming year, like we're going to make your feature. Like, this is going to happen this coming year." So he's a big push on that. I went through a drastic rewrite. I mean, not too much not too crazy of a change, but it was much more. It was the initial intention was just to make a drama film, and then I think by then, I have this whole new relationship with Brandie, and she has a sense of humor to her that allows me to also like enjoy my own humor, and that's where a lot of the darker comedy came into play. It's not slapstick film or anything like that, but then we're also, as a culture, we're going through the Me Too movement and stuff. And so that made its way into the screenplay as well. But I was able to walk away with kind of this darkly, I think it's very funny, but it's almost in the same way that Quentin Tarantino has said that he thinks his films are comedies as well. And so I find that about my own film.
It's kind of like sarcasm, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like sarcasm a lot in films, actually, even in real life a little bit. And so, yeah, that's actually, now I do want to talk about the other side of, what goes between the screenplay, that once you write the screenplay and you have that taken care of, you got a great story, and now you got to figure out how to put that together into a production, right? And so that brings me now, obviously this is all done in one location, but there are different rooms in the house that you were filming in. So that meant that you had to, shoot different scenes in different places, and, scene 2 and scene 3 and scene 16, those were shot in this one bedroom, and scene 5 and scene 7 were shot in the kitchen, so how do you organize that into what we call the shot list, and how important is that for? I think it's important for listeners to know this. Even with a short film, it just depends on how many locations you're going to use, and the different settings and the times. Like day for night, night for day. Why it's better to just shoot them all in the day, and then all at night in different scenes if you can.
Mm-hmm. Really, it's so as much preparation as you can have before the shooting day is going to be the best. And I've been on set with feature films where I was the first AD, and the films are now on Netflix and such. So they went on to have their own success, but there were times where we would show up and there's no shot list. And what you have then is you have not only the director going like, well, maybe we can do this, and the DP says, well, maybe we can do that, and then you have someone else going, well, maybe we could do this, and you spend a lot of time like doing all of that. And then especially if you have lights that you need to set up, depending on this particular feature, we weren't using an iPhone, So the camera was heavier, and where's the dolly track gonna be laid, and it just eats up all this creative time you have, and you're working against the clock every day, because Oliver Stone, his autobiography is called Chasing the Light, and what he means by that is like you're chasing that like sunset moment at the end where you can no longer shoot because the sun is gone.
Right.
And so I always try to show up with a shot list available with an idea. Even, I do a bird's eye view of on paper where the actors are going to be, where the camera's going to be, what is the camera going to move, things like that. And then also we have, it listed out in a type version, shot 1, shot 2, what that's going to be. Because you have to translate this to someone else as well. As far as your DP, you have to translate this back to the actors, because you want them to cue at certain moments to move so that they move with the camera at the same time. And so as much preparation as you can have, because anybody who's shot a film knows that it's basically just it's a war zone, and anything can happen at any moment. And so the more preparation you can have, then you can work around the issues that are now coming up, be it the battery's dying, the camera's overheating, in our case, we had situations where the neighbors were mowing the lawn on that day, and that sound, just that odd like lawnmower sound, or the diesel truck down the street just fired up. And so you're constantly kind of battling these other things. And if you have everything prepared ahead of time, then you can kind of juke left or juke right. Or it's like Scorsese or De Niro would say about their what seems like improvisation and ad lib is actually well rehearsed to a point where they've kind of through the rehearsal they found the ad lib moments and then added it to the screenplay, and it just sounds natural. And so it just saves time. There was the day where we were massively behind shooting because of the shot setup, and I pulled the script aside, knowing what time I told everybody that we were going to end. I was like, we're ending at 5 or 6 today. So I looked at like what shots I had, how many pages actually. I looked at how many pages I had, and I wrote down the time that we need to be done with that page. I wrote it down. We got to be done with this page by 2. The next page by 3. The next page. I was like, this is what we're going to do, and I cut out shots and figure out something else. But I can only do that because I've already laid a blueprint for myself, anyways. And
and also because you wrote it.
Yeah.
So that also helps because you know that story inside and out.
Yeah, but it's like, how do I want to, cinema is about motion altogether. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of moments that I wish, thinking back on my own movie, I wish I would have moved the camera more. There's a lot of moments where I did move the camera, and I'm like, okay, that's exactly what I should have been doing mostly in different times. But you have to have that shot list. You have, as a director, if you're the person directing this, if you have to see this thing visually all the way through, and if you have that vision in your mind, that has to go on paper just the same way that when you wrote the script, if you're the writer as well, it has to go on paper, because you have to translate this to other people and have a battle plan for what you're doing for the day.
And you had a lot of experience as an AD, because one of the jobs for the AD is the shot list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and up until the point where I made my feature, I mean, I've been making short films for 15 years. I also went through film school. There's a lot in there, but I certainly have I shot a day without a shot list? Sure. But I mean, you gotta be real. It comes through something that you've experienced. But is it frustrating though? Let's say somebody who's brand new at filmmaking comes to me, asks me if I will help them out for the day, and if I show up and they don't have a shot list, it's very discouraging. And I can only imagine if it's discouraging for me, it is for everybody else who's like giving up their time for the day.
Yeah.
Because in our world of micro budget, no budget filmmaking, we're not getting a day rate pay. We're not doing this for the money. We're doing this for the love. But at the same time, we have to be respectful of each other's time, because we all have we've in order to be there that day, we've left other time commitments. We may have left families at home, loved ones, things like that, order to shoot for the day. And if you're going to steal someone's time like that, then you better be prepared. Is my
continuity is really important, and that also helps as well, because if continuity, not having that right, could really just blow the whole thing. And it's such an investment to make a feature film, for everybody involved, that you really don't want to do it. And you have these tools that you can use, like the shot list, the screenplay for one, the shot list, getting a script supervisor. I always say is important. I used to do that job. But one of the things, the cinematographer part, they're really involved in the look and the feel of everything, and, making sure everything comes out right, it gets recorded, all that stuff. And the director, I mean, you're the one with the vision, and you're working with the characters a lot, the actors. And so you have these different people doing different things, and they all play a part. And this is leading to something, by the way. My next question for you guys together, maybe we can start with Brandie. And this is my next question is about team, building a team that you can work with and that works well together.
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I first met Ryan, I actually was interested in connecting with filmmakers around the area. I don't know anybody at the time. And so when I met Ryan, he already kind of was a part of this awesome, local group. They met often, I think weekly. They would have weekly meetings, and they would all kind of workshop each other's projects and supported each other on each other's projects. They all just showed up for one another. And so I kind of jumped into that. It was attractive to me. And I thought, wow, that's a team supporting one another. And I hadn't had that before, or hadn't had that experience quite yet. So, so even today, after, 10 years, they still kind of show up for each other and support one another. Whether someone's directing their own short film and someone else wrote it, and they were a cinematographer on one set and now they're directing on your project. So it's nice. They all kind of shift and wear different hats for everybody's project. So it kind of shifts, but it's been nice to be part of a community like that. So if you can find a networking team of independent filmmakers in your area, I highly support that. I encourage it, especially if you don't know anybody. So even being now married to Ryan, it's just nice having somebody next to you who supports you and is right there to help. So I don't know if you have anything to add, Ryan.
Well, I think to add to Brandie's story, at the time she wasn't on social media, and so
yes,
and
that's correct.
That was a piece of how when I developed. So my background, I went to film school at the University of Central Florida, which is in Orlando, Florida, but I'm originally from Ogden, Utah. After completing film school, I moved back to Ogden and met up with, again, my best friend Jason White, and we started putting films together. But one of my biggest things is something that I've seen before, where there's two kind of mindsets with an independent filmmaker at our level. It's some people are trying to make these Star Wars films, and they're competing against Lucasfilm in some kind of way, and it's well, you're not gonna have the budget for that, so probably don't go that route. But then the other thing is people start competing with each other, and it's really odd, because it's we really, if we're fighting each other, we're not gonna be able to get there together. This is independent filmmaking. Like other things, you can make an example for this, but independent filmmaking at our level is kind of like the high tide raises all boats thing. So it's if I help on your production and you help on my production, then we really help each other. I'm not sure which one of us is going to finally land the foot in the door, but when you do, then because we've helped each other, we can get there together.
And the other part of networking is that it's the branches on the tree, right? Because they, you know, each one that you connect with and you work well with knows people that you don't know that they can also bring in, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's now this is like 2011, but as soon as Jason White and I started actively trying to find these like other film people in the area, it easily bled into like who knows who, and then I've met so many different people with different talents along the way that become involved in the process. And a large part of my team and group is who are now like family and friends to me. If you watch my movie, you see their names on the credits. That's my team. That's my family. But I met most of them all through that networking process of filmmaking. The person who the two people I met Jason in high school, met Brandie because we worked together, and she just happened to be into films as well. So everybody else was through networking and filmmaking, and that's how the team developed. And I've been just simply production assistant at times. I've on their stuff. I've been producers on their stuff, and I came through for them and at times, and I was very fortunate to have it where they came through for me. So
yeah, I mean it's so important. I think it gets overlooked a lot of times. Is that I want to ask you about what you guys talked about, because and when I say what you guys talked about, I'm actually referring to in our film festival in San Diego. You guys came and you presented a mobile filmmaking with iPhone presentation and workshop. Can you go over some of the since you already presented it, the things that the attendees and the other filmmakers really dwelled on? Because that would give us, our listeners, some tips and some pointers. I remember that you guys went through a lot of things, but there were a few things that people were, when we were doing the Q&A, they were really like, emphasizing, like it was really interesting for them.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have what their takeaway notes were. I think it probably is just I'm going to like my own perspective on some of these things. And one of which is one of the things I always hit on heavily is the concept. There's a question sometimes like, are there rules in cinema? When you're making, like, people talk about the rules of filmmaking, and even if it's down to like the 180-degree rule, or you mentioned continuity a second ago, and I feel like sometimes like the rule, to me, the answer is no. There are no rules. Like this art form, just because there's been blockbuster templates put together, we should still be able to mold this in any way that we see fit. And by example of my feature film, where I have multiple actors, what I interpret as playing the same characters, to me, and then there's moments even when in my own film where like the camera's showing an actor playing a husband, and then I pan to something else and come back and it's a whole nother actor. It's not conventional, and I just think that like it's okay to break these rules. And if you watch any large von Trier film or Cronenberg or anything, like you'll see that like they're not concerned about the quote, I do air quotes in the air, like rules of cinema. So really we should be able to play with it. This is a playground, and we should be able to utilize every piece of it that we can. We just simply we've developed a language of film in cinema, but I've seen films, William Friedkin films, where like the main character dies at the very end in unconventional ways and you're kind of shocked. I was just reading an article recently where people were so horrified by the Star Wars Rogue One, by its ending, and I'm like, yeah, but it's the one movie that has that kind of crazy ending to it in that series. And so I would say, like, if you're developing something, you're developing a story, if you're concerning yourselves with what the rules are, you're not focusing on the right thing. You need to step back and go like, I don't have to explain this all the way. I can actually make it very different than what I've seen. Obviously be inspired by other movies, but think about how you can twist that just a little bit differently. And if you look at really, and even Steven Soderbergh's films, the way he shoots a scene, he doesn't, he'll take what used to be just shot, reverse shot, and he'll find a way to shoot it just drastically different than what we've seen before in the past, but not in a way that makes this obscured, but just in a very subtle way that we don't realize that he's doing it very differently.
It's like innovating. It's like innovation, right? You're taking the things and the concepts that are there and you're making them, you're improving on them, but you're doing it in a way that's unique. Mm-hmm. Because if all the films are the same and they all follow the same template, right, then it kind of gets, who's going to watch the next one? Yeah.
Well, and, in the very early days of cinema back in, 1890s and leading into the 1910 and stuff like that, an innovative style would have been panning to the left, like just simply making the camera go from left to right, or, parallel action where you have, you have a train robbery going on at the same time. You have the police gathering their guns and going after it happening at the same time. And that type of style and editing was groundbreaking, and it's what we see now day to day. But we shouldn't stop innovating in this format. And when you're shooting with no budget, nobody's there to stop you. Like it's kind of like if you idolize the Francis Ford Coppola and the Steven Spielbergs back in the day in their era of jumping right after the Bonnie and Clyde film would come out, and so now they're Coppola's often wherever shooting this epically long movie, Apocalypse Now, like nobody's stopping them. And we hear today about Warner Brothers they just shelved the Batgirl film. Warner Brothers got in the way of the Justice League film. We hear all these times where the suits, as we call them, are dictating what is being seen and things like that. Well, when you're shooting at our level, nobody's here to stop you. So at this point, create the next camera move, create the next piece that's
especially with an iPhone or a Samsung or whatever, in any smartphone, you have the capability of literally reinventing cinema, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think just when you're at a low budget or no budget at all, you're forced to be more creative. It's like, how can I, make this more entertaining? So like Ryan mentioned earlier, we bring in more actors to do these parts instead of camera style, instead of doing shot, reverse shot. What else can we do? Ryan, I think I missed that one shooting day, but the scene where we're throwing dirt on top of a, what was that, like a plexiglass?
It was your idea. There's one character burying the other, but it was like Brandie said, do the shot where it's the camera's looking up from the grave and we're throwing dirt right on top of plexiglass.
Right, from that victim's point of view. So, it's just being creative and working with what you have. And I think that's what makes independent, low budget filmmaking visually wonderful to see, honestly.
What were some of the other things that you touched on during the workshop?
There was what I finished it also with, making your storytelling kind of concise. So when, I think probably everybody's at some point has read a feature film screenplay that there was a lot of fat that needed to be trimmed. There's probably many times where somebody has told you a feature film idea, or even as a filmmaker, you have a feature film idea and you start to go through it and it's really like, well, you have a short film. Or how many times have I heard where someone has a short film and as they're telling me the short film, I'm like, you're not going to be able to squeeze this in 20 minutes. This is a feature film. And so the exercise that I'd previously done through film school was, if you can, so we were forced to write screenplays that could only be 3 pages. It couldn't be 4, it couldn't be 3.5, it had to be 3. And you had to write a screenplay for 6 pages, and it couldn't be 7, and it also could be 5. It had to be 6. And so you find a way to tell that story. And so there's a book out there with short short stories that are written in 55 words. And it can't be 54 and it can't be 56. It's in 55 words. And the idea was that if you can train yourself to write a story in that, with that parameter set on there, then your ability to tell the story, to tell stories becomes sharper and more effective and accurate, because you're basically constraining yourself. So what I did at the end of the workshop is I promised everybody I'll write a 55-word short story. But I also challenged them to write a 55-word short story as well, and make it public. So we posted it on our Instagram, and people shared theirs on their Facebook as well. And I think it's a great exercise. I think if you're hearing this, take the next week and try to put just 3 of them together, 3 55-word short stories together. It doesn't include the title. You can have the title be almost as long as you want, but 55-word short stories. And if you can master that, the concept is that, like, when you write 110 pages, you can do this concisely, and the characters will say exactly what they need to say and not a ton of fluff. That's the concept.
Yes. I almost forgot about that. I know you gave them homework, but I forgot what exactly it was. Gosh, so much has happened since April. I mean, we're only like 5 months from there, but it seems like it's a year. That's a great exercise. You know, in the films that I worked on, they were all short films for the most part. And we volunteered our weekends to work on these films. And one of the cool things about it was that the selection of film festivals that our producers and the director was choosing, she was very selective, you know, on which film festival she was submitting it to. And they all had different time limits, you know, for their shorts and their categories. And I remember, you know, we got to make a 10-minute short and a 15-minute short and then a 20-minute short just to qualify for these different film festivals. And that came in handy, you know, in our film festival because, you know, we had a time limit. But there was a time in 2019, John Woosley is his name. He made a film. It was, you know, it was I think it was like 20 something minutes. I could be wrong, but whatever it was, he didn't make it for, you know, he couldn't submit it to our film festival because it didn't fit either feature or the shorts. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, I think he came out from Missouri, actually. I said, if you present a workshop, I will give you this time to do the workshop, but that means that you can only show your film if it's no longer than 15 minutes. And I knew I was devastating him because I could tell this was his baby story, you know what I mean, in his film. Uh-huh. But I also knew that he could cut it short, that it actually would be better. But I wasn't going to tell him that. I just gave him that choice. Uh-huh. And so he went ahead and he did that, guys. He shortened that film to 15 minutes. And he loved it. He showed it to people, and it worked better. And he actually won another film festival because of it, you know, because of that. So he thanked me for, you know, sort of forcing his hand at cutting it shorter. And sometimes that happens because you're shooting, you wrote it, you shot it, you directed it, and now you're the editor, right? It's all in one hand. And you can fall in love with so many aspects of it. But for the quality of the story itself in a film, it's very hard to pull out and see that from a different perspective, which is the combination between, you know, a producer, right, and the viewer, right?
Oh yeah. I think we've had to do it a couple times.
So we did. So Brandie's short film, which also played at the International Mobile Film Festival, is called Fight on Set.
I was thinking of Married and Loving It.
So, and it was in the 2021 festival circuit.
Yep.
Yeah.
But she also had another festival that it was women focused, I believe.
It was it was like a women and wine film festival, and it had to be an exact 3 minutes. It was like 3 minutes, not 3:01, not 3:02. It was like 3 minutes, and it was already a short film. So I remember, and I directed it, I wrote it, and I had to trim it up. So, and I didn't want to trim it. I didn't want to kill my darlings, as they say when you're writing a manuscript. But yeah, it's a tough decision. But it's like, okay, if you can kill out even one word can make a difference. It's like, can I get rid of that? Can I get rid of this? It's really picking and choosing what works for the story, what doesn't, what can you shave off, trim up, and sometimes it's for the better.
So it was a 6-minute short to begin, and we had to narrow it down to 3.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to make it 5 for my film festival too, right, Brandie?
Yep. So, it was 5 for yours. The minimum was. Yep.
Yeah. Now I still prefer the longer version, but I'm also close to the source material. But was producer on it. I don't know. As far as for kind of the listeners, I'm always kind of surprised when someone makes like a 45-minute, 50-minute short film, and I'm surprised in the sense it's like, if for the festival circuit, you're too long, really, to be considered, and at the same time, it's almost like, why? If your story can go 50 minutes, can it go another 20 and just qualify for a feature in that sense? Or can you narrow this down into the 15 minutes?
See, it's one of the things, having run my film festival and having so much respect for you guys, that the one thing that I don't want to do is make exceptions and change things once we've put the call out for films. Once that submission period starts, I know that there are people in the background, like we were, that we know if we want to be in this film festival per se, and I think more filmmakers should do that, like we did, when I was working with this group. This is before mobile film, which was to say, we're definitely going to want to submit our film to these 3 film festivals, and we already know what what the qualifications are. We want to make sure that we meet that, right? And we want to make sure that we're able to do these in different time frames. So the one thing that I don't want to do as a film festival is to throw a wrench into somebody's project and have them, go on Facebook or something and go, oh my God, the International Mobile Film Festival said it was 1 to 5 minutes, and now they're saying, yeah, it's okay if you make it 6 minutes. Well, shoot, I'm already editing it. I could have included this other thing, or vice versa, right? And so it does come down to that too, for a film festival, where you have to consider what you guys are going through, because you're creating. It's like saying, you know what, we don't need the wine in that sauce after all. It's like, oh my God, I went out and bought that $40 bottle of wine for this,
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's
tough.
I mean,
it is tough.
Sorry, I guess I'll say, like, well, the filmmaker still has a film. I mean, it's like they still have something. They're completely out.
No, I think you certainly want to share your story and share it with everyone. So
let's talk about that. Let's talk about the story part, because I know you guys are, you and I both see eye to eye on that, and I know we all see eye to eye on that with a lot of filmmakers. And I know it's kind of a key word now, but it is really about the story, right?
Go ahead.
Is the question, is filmmaking about the story?
Yeah, isn't it really about the story when it comes down to it? Shouldn't that be at the center focus?
I think so. I think it's a good piece of it.
I'm kind of artsy-fartsy. So
Ryan's kind of going over here like, I don't know. But yeah, I think it's what grasps you, right? It's what keeps you watching. If it's a good story, if it's interesting, if it has a hook, if it has, whatever genre form, you're trying to entertain with. But I think so. I think that's the.
I guess,
I think that's
I mean, here's a couple.
I guess what's your argument?
I guess well, yeah. If we're gonna, on one hand, it's like, does the film? Because I've seen some avant-garde films and they have zero story, right? I mean, it's all about the visual and things like that, right? But then I asked myself, like, we just recently rewatched Demolition Man, and I go, like, is it because of the story? Is that the reason why I like it? Do I love?
No, yeah, it's like, is the story that great? But it's entertaining, and it's kind of cliche moments.
Story, or do I like?
It's still got to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and so it's the structure.
Yes, but then there's other movies like, I love No Country for Old Men for the story. Like, there's other movies where it's like, I absolutely do get the story. So I think, I'm going to play devil's advocate here and go like, well,
I guess it depends.
But then, like, Clerks, however, as they're now coming out with Clerks 3, Clerks, the original, on a visual aspect, isn't, very intriguing. And my apologies to Kevin Smith if he ever hears this, but, I'm not dogging this film. Obviously, he's helped us all at this point. But, like, I think that, but it was the story, though, and it was his writing and his dialogue that has helped project him further through his movies. Even when I've seen Kevin Smith now 3 times, not like met him, but gone to his shows, and he'll talk about, like, kind of like when it was like Chasing Amy and the way that he was shooting it and kind of how flat some of the backgrounds were and things like that. But it's because it was the writing and it was the story that really helped push it along.
I mean, so when we say story, a lot of times people are connecting to what you write, you know what I'm saying? And how that plays out. But there's a lot of storytelling that's involved with every aspect of the production and the post-production. When you're color grading, right? The effect of your film as the story can be emphasized not just in the writing, but also in how that is perceived by the viewer. Because one side of the story is how you see your story, how you're composing that story, and how you're telling that story. But what does the person on the other end, how do they perceive it? Because if they perceive a different story than what you have, as long as it has an effect on them, then you're really okay with that. You're not going to go, and bash somebody over the head. You didn't get my story right. You know what I'm saying? It has a lot to do with that. We watch films more than once, right? When we have different moods, right? And they hit us differently. But there's a factor in the story itself that will allow that to happen and play out well. That's my personal belief, and I think that's the magic in filmmaking, that almost anybody can enjoy a film. I mean, like your film, right? Was a great story. But there were some parts of it that some people may not appreciate, like the hacking of your personal part.
The gas station.
That's my favorite scene.
Your favorite scene, right? But for somebody else, they're like, oh my God, why did that, that may have, but overall, right? The story itself was good. It was captivating, and it was something that they could connect to. Because it could be, we were talking about Star Wars earlier. We're talking about aliens and things that are completely different than our world, and yet we still connect to it because of the characters, and the story is playing out through characters, through emotions and things like that, right?
Yeah.
Feel free to disagree, Ryan. I mean,
no, I can see both sides of that. So that's certainly what the person on the other end is, the viewer, right? It's like, what do they see? They're watching a movie to escape something or to connect with something, right? So, but like Ryan said, you can record, a butterfly just sitting there for 10 minutes, and are you really trying to tell a story? Or
that's interesting what you just said, that they see something to either connect with it or escape from, or escape it, because in the sense of, now you just said the butterfly thing. It's almost like in a movie that, if like an avant-garde film, kind of like a museum showcase, kind of a film. It's almost like we would bring our own story to the table, in a sense, kind of like a what's the editing trick that the Russian guy had figured out, where it's like you take a man looking in one direction, and if you cut to a dog, your emotion is different than when you cut to a woman, the way you think of him, kind of thing.
That is the psychology.
It's almost like you brought your own. So in a sense of,
absolutely.
So in the sense of, like, I think it's kind of interesting the way that Brandie just said it. Film can be one of two things, and both of them are great. It's either escapism, or you're going to connect with it.
Right. I think it's one or the other. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Brandie. I agree with you too, Ryan. Tell me about audio.
The hardest challenge, probably.
Get a good audio guy or gal, if you can. Yeah.
Yeah. In hindsight, maybe in the days that they invented audio for film, it was probably like a curse and a blessing at the same time, because it's one of the hardest tricks of the magic show to pull off. And in my film, because we shot it, we didn't shoot it on the soundstage. We shot it in another best friend of mine, Justin Witten. We shot it in his house. He's a producer on the film as well. But you don't realize just how, hardwood floors, blank walls. You don't realize that reverb tone you get. We're shooting, and suddenly today is the day that everybody wants to mow their lawns, and you can just hear it. You don't realize, like, the buzzing noise that your refrigerator makes in the background. It's one of the many challenges of overall. We had a great sound guy for our movie, who we found through networking. Actually, Brandie found, who really brought a lot of experience to the table. Also an independent filmmaker, and it was able to help us out a lot through just having somebody who was just somebody dedicated on the sound quality overall of a film.
Yeah, Johnny Griego, he was our sound guy. He was fantastic. He had a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience just on what to look for, what to expect, what to plan for. He was, he had all the contingencies in place, honestly. Brilliant guy. So.
Yeah, I would definitely suggest to, not think of audio as a secondary thing. You need a camera to record, yes. The camera does have a microphone, yes. But that's not sufficient,
mm-hmm.
For the audio.
Go through some testing. Do some prep work too before you shoot if you can, and just get those nuances out the way if you can. Obviously, you can't control all the outside noises and disruptions that happen. Again, we're working with low budget, no budget. We don't have these big studio sets that we can control the environment. So you have to kind of plan for those things.
Another thing I wanted to bring up is, you're talking about how many films you guys have worked on, and Ryan 15 years. And so I do want to make a little bit of an announcement here that Ryan and Brandie are going to each be on separate panels for this the 12th edition of the International Mobile Film Festival. And that is Ryan is going to be one of the judges for the feature film competition. And Brandie, you're going to be one of the judges for the screenplay competition. So I wanted to thank you both for doing that. That is the toughest job.
We are so excited. Yeah. Yes. Honestly, I'm really excited about reviewing the screenplays. That's my bread and butter right there. I love reviewing screenplays. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think that's my favorite part of filmmaking is screenplay writing. So absolutely delighted.
And Ryan?
Well, if you're listening to the podcast and you're thinking about submitting your film, and now you know that I would be one of the judges. As you can obviously hear, I have a very eclectic palette around film. So around as far as I enjoy art films, I enjoy even Demolition Man and such. So I love seeing new and challenging things with film. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of movies people have put together.
Yeah. Now on the feature film competition, it's all narrative films, but there will be different horror and drama, and we had our crime spree, not crime spree. Oh my gosh, the crime drama from our friends. James Smith and Caroline Spence, whom you met.
Yeah. They are wonderful people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, there's different, we had a Western shot on the iPhone. So anything goes pretty much as long as it's a narrative film. But I can't thank you guys enough for taking on that job. I take that job of selecting the judges. My God, I work on that all year, because it's a very important and crucial part of it. And I stay out of that. So it's going to be in each panel. It's going to be in their hands. And so, by the way, we should let you know, let me go ahead and take advantage of this and say that the deadline for the regular deadline anyways, for the feature film competition is October 19th. So you still have some time to submit a feature film. Just go to internationalmobilefilmfestival.com. You'll see a big button to submit on Film Freeway there, and do it that way. And it's the same thing for the screenplays. The screenplays are for shorts, and they're about 6 to 8 pages on a screenplay. We don't want your 130-page screenplay, right, Brandie?
Right. Yes. Yeah. Just send us the shorts for now, and I can get to the features later.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, do you guys want to add anything?
I guess if there's what's the deadline, Susie, for the screenplays?
Oh, don't put me on the spot like that. I'll write it down on there. Hold on a second. Let me open up. I should mention to our listeners while I'm doing this that we have a brand new platform for newsletters and to bring the community together, which is internationalmobilefilmfestival.substack.com. And we've got a page where all the deadlines and the regular deadlines and the extended deadlines are. And for the short screenplay deadline, it's November 20th.
November 20th. Okay.
Yeah. So that's the regular deadline for that. And for the shorts, it's November 19th. So, we also have a smartphone photo contest. I don't know if you've heard about that, but that one is, telling a story with one photo, but you can submit, I believe it's up to 6. We'll select one. And that deadline, again, I'm going with the regular deadlines. They cost less. And that's November 21st. So, October, November is probably the dates that you want to think about.
Yeah, just to add to that, as far as the screenplays go, the screenplay submittals, there's still plenty of time. You can write a short film, you can type up a short screenplay in just a couple pages, 1 to 2 pages. I'd love to read it. Send in your ideas, get creative. If you've never written a screenplay before, there's a great book out there. It's called The Screenwriter's Workbook by Sid Field. I picked this book up when I was in, 8th grade. So when was that? 1998. Ryan conveniently happened to pick it up the same year. We didn't even know each other. So we moved in together and we both found this in our moving boxes. I had a copy and he still has his copy. Isn't that funny? And it's still one of the greatest books that, it has the formatting. It gives you tips and tricks on really how to format a screenplay, how to write a story act, structure your screenplay, follow that guide. Another book I recommend is called Save the Cat. It's the last book on screenwriting that you'll ever need, and that is by Blake Snyder. So
you know who teaches that? By the way, it should be 6 to 8 pages, not 1 page for this competition. But you know who teaches that is Jennifer Zhang, whom you met. One of the.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Oh, how great!
Yeah.
She
teaches that.
That's neat. That's awesome. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, all right. So, any shout outs you want to give? I know we're never going to forget Jason White. Jason, if you're out there, we'll have to get you in our podcast sometime because you've been mentioned in every one so far.
He's got a new screenplay, a feature film screenplay that he's shopping around. It's already been picked up by a couple of other film festivals. So he's still hard at work in the writing field. So excited.
That's awesome.
Where it's going to go.
Yeah. Yep. He's doing good things. Mm-hmm. So look out for Jason White.
All right. So here comes the part when we say goodbye to our listeners. Say goodbye to our listeners, guys.
See you, everybody. Thanks for having us. Thanks for listening. And
yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for I was going to say watching, but I guess you didn't see that part. But thanks for listening. You can always check out our film. As we said, Married and Loving It is available on Amazon Prime. You can find me on Instagram at ryan.mcdonald.filmmaker. And feel free to shoot me a message. I'm happy to connect and work with other filmmakers, other actors. And, even as a director, I'm also open and looking for films that I did not write to direct. So, feel free to shoot me a screenplay if you're a writer who isn't interested in directing. Let me know.